All right, let's take a look at this practice quiz. The first question, what's the ability to do work? That's a definition. That's energy. What law of thermodynamics states that entropy of the universe is constantly increasing? So it's not talking about energy, it's talking about disorder or entropy, and that's the second law of thermodynamics. Number 3 is a little bit of a trick question. What law states that energy is constantly increasing? And that's none of the above. First law states that it's constant. Number 4, this is known as the energy available to do work. That's free energy, or also known as Gibbs free energy. When free energy decreases, we say those reactions are spontaneous. In a system, enzymes are going to reduce the activation energy needed. Number 8, this is acted upon by the enzyme. We call that a substrate. Number 9, which of the following can slow down enzyme activity? That is going to be inhibitors. Everything else is going to probably increase it. This can denature an enzyme. Well, pH can and temperature can. Inhibitors probably not. But so in that case, both A and B is probably the best answer. What wavelength of light is the worst for photosynthesis? That's green. Green reflects, doesn't get absorbed that well. Number 12, what's the main function of the light reactions? And that's produce energy to power the dark reactions. That's in the form of ATP and NADPH. Reduction in a living system is gain. Remember oil rig. Oxidation is loss of electrons. Reduction is gain. Number 14, during what process is oxygen made? You said, bing, the light reactions. Number 15, oxygen is made during photosynthesis in order to donate electrons. Number 16, photosystems take light and direct its energy to, ding, electrons. 17, at the beginning of the dark reactions, what molecule is brought into the Calvin cycle? You said CO2. Good job. Number 18, what molecule is regenerated at the end of the Calvin cycle? That's RUBP. Number 19, NADPH participates in the reduction of CO2. Why is that significant? Well, because NADPH is actually holding on to electrons, so it's going to be a part of a reduction. How many times does the plant have to run the Calvin cycle to do a full-on 6-carbon sugar? That's 2. CAM and C4 avoid photorespiration. During cellular respiration, glucose is used up in the cytoplasm during glycolysis. Sorry, that's a wraparound. Glycolysis breaks apart glucose. That's a little bit of a, like 22 is asking like where, and 23 is asking like what's the name, more or less. Krebs cycle occurs in the matrix of the mitochondria. Which molecule is not made during the Krebs cycle? That's water, sorry. 26. What high energy particle is taken from the remnants of sugar and put into NADH? That's electrons. 27. In case you haven't figured out, electrons are important in both process of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So number 27, most of the ATP during cellular respiration is made through chemiosmosis. Boom. This molecule is the acceptor of electrons in oxidative phosphorylation. That's oxygen. It turns into water. 29. Concentration gradient of this molecule leads to the production of ATP. That's hydrogen ions. Bam. Where pathway makes CO2? Sorry, this one's out of our scope. But that would be like fermentation, but that's not going to be on the examination because I cut it out. What pathway makes the majority of ATP in the cell? This would be related. Oxidative phosphorylation. Yikes. And sorry, 32 is not something that would be something that we would be focusing on right now. So just a heads up. And that same with 30. So 30 and 32 would not be something we would focus on for this like quiz. So going on to, if you were to write out the general equation for photosynthesis, that would be, whoa, sorry, I don't know what that is. That would be, carbon dioxide plus water plus light is going to make glucose and oxygen. If you were to start with water and describe the pathway in which electrons take until they get to sugar, basically they start with water. They get broken out of water, which makes oxygen and hydrogen ions, but those electrons go to a pigment complex. They get excited with light, and then they go through those like series of like electron transport chain where they pump hydrogen into the thylakoid, but then they end up getting incorporated into another photosystem or pigment complex. From there, they get excited with energy again, and then they go to something called NADP reductase, which incorporates those electrons into NADPH, which then goes into the stroma of the chloroplast, and then during like the second stage of the DART, kind of the Calvin-Benson cycle with the CO2 reduction, that's when those electrons get put into the sugar. If you were to take the general equation for respiration, that's glucose plus oxygen or 6 oxygens will yield 6 carbon dioxides, 6 waters, and energy. And if we start with the sugar and talk about the pathway those electrons take, so basically it's in sugar. Those electrons get ripped out of sugar during glycolysis, and then get put into NADH. But then after that, there's that intermediate step in between glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, and the electrons get ripped out of glucose then, and then during the Krebs cycle, they get ripped out of whatever the sugar was, whether it was acetyl-CoA or some other intermediate during the Krebs cycle. But then they all get put into NADH or FADH, and then they go to the electron transport chain in the mitochondria, which those electrons are used to pump hydrogen into the intramembrane space, and then the electrons get incorporated with oxygen at the end of the electron transport chain, which then combines to make water. All right, so there's a lot going on there, and then it's kind of subtle, but electrons end up being really important in this process. It's something that's kind of downplayed, but something to pay attention to. And I'll just scroll through the answers here, and I hope this is helpful. Like I said, Please ignore number 30. Sorry, number 30 and 32 got in there. All right. Thank you.